Large blaze, a towering grey column and flashes from what looked like fireworks. But worse was to follow. A massive explosion. And as it erupted, an important clue emerged in the colour of the smoke, a reddish brown, which meant that ammonium nitrate was involved in vast quantities. So what is this substance, ammonium nitrate? Well, it's a chemical mainly used as a fertiliser. Farmers in the UK and all over the world apply it to their fields. And on its own, there's no danger. But this powder can also be used as an ingredient for explosives. It was favoured by the IRA. This was the London Docklands bombing in 1996. And Scotland Yard persuaded farmers to guard their supplies carefully.
We did a great deal of work informing farmers, informing those that had access to it, that stored it, how dangerous it was, how it should be stored so that if there was an explosion, it wouldn't propagate and grow into a huge explosion like we saw yesterday.
Why is ammonium nitrate so potentially dangerous? Well, in certain conditions, it can become unstable. This vast explosion in China 5 years ago involved a quarter of the quantity that erupted yesterday. The explosion in Beirut happened in the worst possible place, right in the port with a lot of buildings around, and the impact would have been felt in several different ways. First, a shock wave, leading to a sudden increase in pressure which would have killed people nearby. Then a wave of debris, chunks of concrete and glass hurled through the air maybe a mile or more. And then a cloud of toxic gases and dust carried by the wind right over the city. So why was the ammonium nitrate there in the first place? In the aftermath, there are no clear answers. All of the port's officials are now under house arrest while an investigation starts. Whatever happened, a deliberate detonation can't be ruled out, but nor can neglect and carelessness.
There is probably enough problems within the infrastructure of Lebanon to explain poor storage practices, poor chemical accounting. You probably have all the ingredients in there already without it needing to attribute it to malice.
Seen from space, this was the port before the explosion. Now it lies in ruins, whole buildings wiped out, and the shocking sight of a large ship on its side. Whatever the cause, the recovery will take years.
Former US Vice President Joe Biden has opted not to travel to Wisconsin to accept his party's presidential nomination because of the pandemic. The Democratic convention will be held almost entirely online later this month, and Mr Biden will accept the candidacy in a national address from his home state of Delaware. Donald Trump says he'll give his acceptance speech for the Republican nomination from the White House, which has prompted criticism that he's using the historic residence for political advantage.
It is legal, but if I use the White House, we save tremendous amounts of money for the government in terms of security, traveling. If we go to another state or some other location, the amount of money is, very enormous.
The Biden campaign plans to spend nearly $400 million on advertising, making this the most expensive US election in history. This week, President Trump said he'd ban the Chinese video sharing app TikTok if its American business wasn't sold to an American buyer. It's the latest example of the tougher stance his administration is taking with China in the lead up to the presidential election. A recent poll suggests 3 out of 4 Americans distrust China. It's a feeling that's also not lost on the Democratic challenger for the White House, Joe Biden. Well, to discuss this further, we're joined by Peter Harcher, international editor with the Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Peter, good to talk to you this evening. So, Donald Trump hasn't just demanded that TikTok be sold. He wants a share of the sale. What message does that send to the market?
It's a very unconventional manoeuvre, and it's been likened to a mafia business shakedown rather than a nation-state setting neutral regulations. Donald Trump is behaving a bit more like a broker seeking a commission on a deal. And this has had a harmful effect, not just in the standard political mumbo-jumbo Twitter world, but among investors, it's sending, big international investors, it's sending a disturbing signal about what this means for the neutrality of regulation and the rule of law in the US capital markets and US corporations. The US has already been marked down a bit. The US dollar's suffered a 10% loss against a basket of world currencies in the last few months because of its fumbling of the coronavirus. This just adds more doubt and fear to investors' concerns about the capacity and capability of the US as a competent, modern, capitalist state in the event that Donald Trump should win another 4 years.
Yeah, Peter, over the past 4 years of his presidency, Donald Trump's relationship with China has changed dramatically. He was initially cozying up, of course, to Xi Jinping. He now wants to be seen as getting tough with China. Does he have any other targets in mind, do you think?
Well, yes, of course he does, because we know, thanks to his former National Security Advisor, John Bolton, that when Donald Trump was in his pandering phase, if I can use that pun on the Chinese national symbol, with Xi Jinping, he actually asked Xi Jinping for help with his own re-election in the US. And the way he sought this, the channel was to be by cutting a good trade deal between China and the US. But of course, that's become less and less likely, and now looks essentially it's failed. So without Xi Jinping being willing to help Donald Trump get re-elected as a friend, Donald Trump is now turning against Xi Jinping, and has turned against him decisively and increasingly over the last 12 months, treating him as a foe. And by getting tough on China, he's getting quite solid support with the US public, and in fact, right across the American political spectrum. It's notable in the American political system at the moment, China has no friends. There's not a voice left in the American political system that will defend China.
And Australia appears reluctant to take a similarly hardline approach. Particularly if we mention TikTok, for instance, no sign that it's going to be banned here at this point.
That's a really interesting point of distinction, actually. The Trump administration has not only said that they will ban TikTok in the US, but they've also signalled that they're going to go on and ban other Chinese-based apps in the US. WeChat, for example, which is a huge communication channel, huge communication platform for Chinese people, speaking people everywhere. So that's going to continue, and Trump's got very verbose and insistent about that. But Scott Morrison, in the last couple of days, has signalled a point of departure on that and said no, he sees no reason, and there's no technical reason, for Australia to ban TikTok or other China-based apps. So this is a very interesting departure here, Andrew, because it suggests that, and remember that Australia and the US share intelligence quite deeply and through the Five Eyes network, because it suggests that there isn't a solid intelligence or technical or security justification for the US ban on TikTok, that it is a political ban. And on this one, Scott Morrison has said, we're not going there, you're on your own there.
And Peter, is an aggressive policy towards China likely to be a winner at the US election, do you think? And how is Joe Biden, the Democratic challenger, likely to differentiate in his policies?
Well, Trump has led the hardening of opinion against China, but the Chinese government did most of the work itself with its conduct during the early phase of the COVID disaster. And American opinion has hardened very substantially just in the last few months. The result of which is that the entire American political system is now seeking to get tough on China. Joe Biden has claimed that Donald Trump isn't tough enough on China, particularly on the trade account, whereas Donald Trump counters that he calls him Beijing Biden, and says no, Biden is the sellout to China. So it's a contest to see who can hit the panda harder, if you like. One of the differences is that Joe Biden is saying he'll be more selective and intelligent about it, and won't lead the country up to the brink of a war. But the shared message and the competition here is that China is not just the rival, but the enemy, and that the competition is who can get tougher with China.
Peter Harcher, thanks for joining us.
Pleasure, Andrew.
Malaysian authorities have